The Gorosei are so strong, not a single Yonko can beat them. After the events of Egghead Island, we learned a lot about the Gorosei, their devil fruit powers, and most importantly, some of their feats. And in just 20 chapters, they proved that they might be the strongest characters in the story, second only to legendary characters like Joy Boy and Emu. In other words, there's a good chance that none of the Yonko can beat them. Considering they'll likely play an active role as villains in the final battle, this naturally leaves the question of who, if anyone, can stop them. So in this video, I'd like to analyze the feats of the Gorosei demonstrated on Egghead Island, use those feats to explain why even the strongest characters like Blackbeard and Shanks probably don't stand a chance, and what Luffy and the other characters would need to do in order to stop each of the 5 members. Now, just a couple of quick disclaimers. First of all, this will contain spoilers for the remainder of Egghead. Second, even though I've carefully examined the feats of each character, be warned that I may mess up some of the more official power scaling terms from time to time. That being said, I did follow this arc weekly, and when I was reading this arc, it became clear right away just how overwhelmingly strong the Gorosei are. So first off is the fact that they have some of the most powerful devil fruits in the story. Well, presumably. The first one we meet is Saint J. Garcia Saturn. We see his hybrid form and we get the name of his form, but we don't actually get the name of a devil fruit. So technically speaking, we don't even know if this is even a devil fruit power, never mind what the devil fruit would be like. That being said, we do see all of the common traits of what appear to be mythical Zoan fruits. All the Gorosei can transform into mythical beasts, can use hybrid and animal forms, and they have insane durability and regeneration. In addition, they also seem to be able to use awakened Zoan powers like Lucci, as they have the same ring of dark clouds and have a level of strength, durability, and regeneration that is clearly on a level above most other characters. And I do want to talk about those powers because it's why these characters are so menacing. But before that, I just want to highlight something that I think a lot of people might forget about. Keep in mind that in their animal forms, each of the Gorosei are massive. They are literally giant. As we can see, they are just as big, if not bigger, than the ships of the giant pirates. In fact, we can see that Nosturo is bigger than the Sunny. So in a fight, before all the feats come into play, something you have to keep in mind is that each of these characters are huge. This means that they are capable of insane feats just by their size alone. It also means that anyone who has to fight them is going to have a fight that looks an awful lot like a boss fight from Elden Ring. After their size, another thing you need to keep in mind is their summoning ability, an ability which might be the source of a lot of their other powers. But before I say more on that, make sure to like the video if you're enjoying it so far. It's the easiest way to support the channel, and it helps spread the video to other viewers like you. So when Saturn shows up, we see him appear via a pentagram circle. Later in the arc, we see that all of the Gorosei are able to teleport from even further away. The trick seems to be that at least one member has to be able to cast the summoning. Just before the other Gorosei arrive on Egghead, we see Saturn say that he'll make the summons. So presumably, the way it works is that the Gorosei can either teleport themselves via these pentagrams, or they can teleport other Gorosei members to their general location. And then of course we learn thanks to the giant robot Emmett that it is possible to send the Gorosei back with the use of Conqueror's Haki. But it's also worth noting that he could only do this with Joy Boy's Haki, someone who's implied to be one of the absolute strongest characters in the whole story. Now, the obvious advantage to this power is that the Gorosei can pop out of nowhere. That's just how teleportation works. But the implication is that these pentagrams might be the source of some of their other abilities. For example, each of the Gorosei have strange regeneration powers. In chapter 1104, Saturn is able to regenerate his arm and horn after taking a Haki-powered punch from Kuma. In 1120, Nosturo is able to regenerate with half of his face missing, almost like the abilities of a Logia user. But the Gorosei all seem to be mythical Zoans. So unless you're someone like Marco whose fruit is specifically tied to regenerative powers, that doesn't make a whole lot of sense. Well, it's worth noting that when the Gorosei regenerate, they can sometimes be seen in shadowy forms. much like the shadow cloud rings and the massive black energy that arises from the pentagram circles. So, presumably, they have regeneration powers that go beyond anything capable of normal devil fruits, that are somehow tied to their strange pentagram powers. The Gorosei are practically immortal. Attacks can do damage, but even when Luffy and Bonnie do a Gear 5th combo attack that damages Saturn, he's able to regenerate right away and is explicitly called immortal by Luffy and the other characters. But that's only when they do damage. As we see many times, even when characters use Haki, this rarely does any noticeable damage to the Gorosei. For example, when Sanji used a Haki kick against one of the Gorosei, it did no noticeable damage whatsoever. So the implication is that they can only be damaged by extremely powerful armament or Conqueror's Haki. But even then, it most likely needs to be insanely strong or advanced Conqueror's Haki. The final thing worth mentioning is the crazy abilities of each of these characters. For example, Saturn can one-shot a lot of characters and has poison attacks. In his bird form, Mars can breathe fire. In his boar form, Warcury is capable of massive damage. In his worm form, Peter can suck people. Pause. And probably the most threatening is Nosturo, who is shown to be incredibly fast, can kill pacifistas in one sword attack, and can use sword attacks so big that they can wipe out entire buildings like the lab on Egghead Island. So just to recap, these are the feats and abilities we've seen. Massive size, incredible regeneration, teleportation and possibly other magic abilities, and presumably mythical Zoan devil fruit powers. Considering all of this, it's easy to see why most of the characters cannot beat the Gorosei. You need advanced Conqueror's Haki to do any serious damage to them, which means anyone lower than at least Admiral level is getting wiped out. And even then, you likely need to be at least as strong as Yonko level. For example, Luffy was able to beat Kaido thanks to his Gear 5th form in Advanced Conqueror's Haki. It's for this reason that I don't think characters like Kaido and Big Mom stand a chance against the Gorosei. Kaido and Big Mom have two things going for them: Conqueror's Haki and insane durability. Very few people can damage them. But as we saw, the Gorosei are capable of incredible power and can use Conqueror's Haki. Furthermore, their regenerative powers make them nearly immortal, so even if Big Mom and Kaido were strong, the odds are they likely can't get over those regenerative powers. In that case, Kaido and Big Mom would probably lose in a battle of attrition. Now, as we saw, characters like Luffy also seem to stand zero chance. We saw that even in his Gear 5th form, Luffy could not land anything close to a lethal attack against the Gorosei. And even then, we still have the issue of their regenerative powers. So against any of the Gorosei, Luffy is losing pretty fast on his own. So out of the living characters, that just leaves characters like Shanks and Blackbeard. Shanks is actually an interesting case because, as we've seen many times, he has a command of Conqueror's Haki unlike anyone else. So because of that, he might stand some chance against the Gorosei. As a matter of fact, because Conqueror's Haki seems to be the secret to stopping the pentagram abilities, if the regenerative powers are actually tied to the pentagrams, theoretically, Shanks could stop their regeneration with his exceptional Haki abilities. Even then, because of their insane devil fruit powers and durability, there's still a serious question of how Shanks would fare. We haven't seen him push to his limit yet, and as we know, anytime he's crossed with Blackbeard, he's always come out with some kind of loss. Which brings us to Blackbeard himself. Blackbeard is an interesting case because we've seen that he is not that strong naturally. He's more of a planner, resorting to jumping people more often than not. But his earthquake powers could help him against the Gorosei, and thanks to his Yami Yami no Mi, Blackbeard might actually be able to stop a lot of the powers of the Gorosei. That being said, it's unclear how he would be able to stand against their Haki powers. He is a Yonko, so we can assume he's got some strong Conqueror's Haki, but it's unlikely that it's as advanced as someone like Shanks. Plus, we haven't seen as many feats with his Haki. So on the one hand, he might be able to even the odds with his Yami Yami powers. But if his Haki isn't strong enough, it's questionable whether he would be able to land lethal damage. And of course, with Blackbeard or Shanks or any character for that matter, this is all assuming it's a one-on-one fight. Remember, Saturn could summon all of the Gorosei, so if you're fighting one of them, you're likely fighting all 5 of them. And if it's 5-on-1, the odds are even worse. Considering how easy it seems to summon, those are some pretty scary odds. Which is why Hockey is so important, because it seems to be the only way to stop the pentagram abilities. And yet, very few characters seem to have the Hockey abilities capable of stopping them. Which is why, as the story is right now, the Gorosei are likely the strongest characters in the current story. That being said, I can see some potential flaws in the future. Like I've been saying, a lot of the threat of the Gorosei is their regeneration and teleportation, and it seems like some sort of magic. But that magic seems like it can be stopped via Advanced Conqueror's Hockey. On that note, given that Luffy will likely advance his Hockey abilities in the coming chapters, the logical conclusion is that he will find out how to stop or at least counter these kinds of abilities. By that point, if he can get past the regeneration and summons, then all he would have to do is use his Hockey to land lethal damage. So in the realm of speculation, looking at the final battle, while it does seem like the Gorosei will act as endgame bosses to some degree, how threatening they'll really be by that point will depend on the kind of Hockey abilities of other characters. In any event, the way things are right now, there is not a single character in the current story that can stop a single member of the Gorosei. But what do you think? How strong do you think the Gorosei are? Who do you think can beat them? Share your thoughts and see what everyone else has to say down in the comments. I'll pick my favorite and share it as comment of the week on my community tab. And if you'd like another discussion like this one, then check out my video on One Piece's art. In that video, I analyze the artistic evolution of One Piece. You can find that video in the playlist linked right here. Until then, thank you for watching, and I hope to hear from you soon.